What are we talking about today? No. I'm going back to Adult Party Cartoon after... How long has it been? 2 years? Man, that's before even Billy came on the channel full time. For those of you who don't know, I have covered Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon before, and today's not going to be the last time either because one big final video will be coming out in about 2 months, so get ready for that, folks. But until then, let's talk about the worst episode that this ill-fated spin-off has to offer, Ren Seeks Help. That's not the worst episode. That's the least bad of them all. Where'd you get this information, guys? Oh, from all the YouTube comments on various different videos and different blog posts on places like DeviantArt and Tumblr? That's really interesting, actually. I mean, I don't want to say that anyone's opinion is bad, and if you disagree with what I have to say in this video, that's totally fine. But I just gotta come right out and say that, to me and to many other people, especially at the time, Ren Seeks Help is absolutely not the worst episode in the entire show. It doesn't even come close, really. When you compare it to things like Naked Beach Frenzy, Stimpy's Pregnant, and Altruists, no, just no. So let's defend Ren Seeks Help. I didn't actually think I would have to do this, but first a little bit of history. Way back in the original Ren and Stimpy show, John Should Be Behind Bars Chris Felucci came up with an episode called Ren Seeks Help. From what we know, it's basically the same episode as we got in Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, but maybe toned down? I'm not sure. Since John doesn't really know what is and is not okay to show kids, it's quite possible that the script was entirely unchanged. There's also a rumor that it was going to be either a prequel or sequel to Ren Needs Help, but there's no real confirmation on that, so yeah. The point is that Nickelodeon viewed the episode as far too extreme, so the script for Ren Seeks Help was never put into production. Flash forward to 2002 when John was starting production on Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon. He decided to dust the script off, make some changes, I assume, because I really don't think that he presented this or this to Nickelodeon. And then bam, Ren Seeks Help came into existence. It was the second episode produced and it was the second one to air, and the only reason I point that out is because Adult Party Cartoon had a very strange airing order as compared to the production. But that's a story for another day. The spin-off, as I'm sure you all know, was hated by almost everybody that watched it, especially fans of the original. However, a lot of people seem to think that Ren Seeks Help, comparatively, was a bit better than the rest. That's not saying very much though, because it's only aired competition where Onward and Upward and Fire Dogs 2. And those things were big messes, so yeah. Good job, Ren Seeks Help, you win by default. But then everything changed when the internet got a hold of the show, and then suddenly, a bunch of animation critics like the mysterious Mr. Enter or Phantom Strider started to review it and then call it the worst thing in animation ever. That is until they found worse things like Where the Dead Go to Die, but the damage had still been done. By the way, I just want to say I'm not throwing shade at people like Mr. Enter or Phantom Strider. I actually like Phantom Strider quite a bit, and even though I haven't seen Mr. Enter's stuff in quite a while, I used to watch him a fair bit back in the day, so at least my memory of watching his stuff is generally positive. But it all goes back to what I said in the Garbage Pail Kids video, where a lot of people out there, especially younger people, will tend to latch on to what their favorite online critic says and then take that opinion to heart, all without actually watching the show. That's what happened here because all the criticisms I'm seeing fall into either one of two camps. The first one is that the disturbing content is very overstated. Now, on paper, it has a lot of really uncomfortable things, like Ren beating Mr. Horse to death off screen with a gun, a bunch of ants getting burnt to a crisp, or a frog being electrocuted by jumper cables. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't enjoy any of this stuff, so let's make that quite clear. But for the most part, the violence is intentionally cartoonish and over the top. It's really hard to take most of it seriously, and yes, I said most. There are a few things there that do cross the line, like, say, oh, I don't know, the tick getting licked by this weird hooked tongue thing that Ren has. But then there are other scenes like where Ren's torturing the frog by driving his tire wheel on his stomach causing his guts to fly out, or where Ren is ripping the legs off a caterpillar. I mean, I can see how people would find this disturbing, yeah, but it's not really that graphic or overly detailed, it's just kinda nasty. Many have also said that the audio can be very hard to listen to because of things like Stimpy screaming or Ren's voice being grating. As for the screaming, it's pretty overstated. It's mostly just crying with the occasional wailing, and it's stuff that Stimpy's done a lot of before. Though I will say that it drags on quite a bit longer than it should. I think we get the point halfway in, but then it just keeps going, and that's purely because they're filling for time. Yes, this episode can get annoying. Most of it is cruel, I get it. But what's shown on screen and what's shown through your speakers isn't necessarily the worst thing out there. And even if the animal torture stuff isn't funny, because it most definitely is not, I can at least see, in theory, what John Kricfalusi is trying to make. He's trying to do something totally insane and over the top, but also zany and wacky. It just didn't land because, wow, this is pretty cruel. And before we get to the second category that all the arguments seem to fall in, I do want to say that this episode does one thing better than all the others. It has a story. What's the plot of Onward and Upward? Ren and Stimpy move into a spittoon and eat mucus. Cool. What's the plot of Fire Dogs 2? Ralph Bakshi comes into the recording studio and recreates John K's accounts of various different interactions they had together. What's the plot of Altruists? Boy, is that the million-dollar question, and to be honest, I still can't figure it out. That thing goes nowhere, and it goes there quickly. Actually, no, it goes there slowly. Painfully slowly. For what it's worth, Ren Seeks Help is able to tell a full story. Something with a beginning, middle, and end. Something that John K has struggled with throughout his entire career. At least when he's on his own and doesn't have anybody to tell him, "No, John, that's not how you're supposed to do things. You can't have long, lingering shots that are filled with nothing but looping animation and stock sound effects. Bad, John! Bad, John!" And while there are quite a few animation errors, I can definitely say that this one was the most ambitious when it comes to trying new things. It has some good lighting, some interesting angles, and it also has some of the snappiest and most fluid animation in the entire show. Even if some of it can be hard to watch sometimes. And now let's get on to the second category that all the arguments seem to fall under. Many people don't seem to realize that all the problems that Ren Seeks Help has, and again, it absolutely does have problems, too many to actually make it good for that matter. All the other episodes not only have the same problems, but they do everything that this episode does way worse. Pick absolutely any part of Ren Seeks Help that you don't like, and I can point to at least one episode that's an even worse example of that trait. You think this episode's gross? Onward and Upward and Stimpy's pregnant got it beat. You think the humor goes nowhere? Try watching Fire Dogs 2. You don't like the sexy stuff that's just shoved in at random in Ren Seeks Help? Have you seen Naked Beach Frenzy? At least this one doesn't depict one of John K's victims in a sexual light. Because yes, that happened! One of the girls in Naked Beach Frenzy is modeled after Katie Rice, one of John K's victims. Isn't that just sweet? You don't like the uncomfortable cruelty that Ren Seeks Help provides? Sorry to say, but that's in every single episode of the spin-off. All of them. Both Ren and Stimpy got flanderized so heavily that they're barely recognizable from the original Nickelodeon show. And Ren is the worst of the two. He's angrier, he's more bitter, he's vicious, he doesn't value Stimpy at all, he's plain and simple a psychopath. This wasn't introduced in Ren Seeks Help, nor is it the only episode that has it. In fact, I'd say that Stimpy's pregnant's the worst of them because that's the one where he tries to abort Stimpy's baby with a coat hanger and goes on a drive-by shooting just because he can. And that's probably why this episode was considered the best of the adult party cartoon episodes at the time. It's because it was muted compared to the rest. It just so happens to have a microcosm of all the flaws that the show had overall, but it doesn't do it the worst. And no, this episode's not worse because it has a little sampling of all the problems, because Altruists and Fire Dogs 2 have that as well. And if you don't believe me that the other episodes have much more disturbing content, well, the non-Ren Seeks Help episodes have, but are not limited to having, simulated anal sex with a saw, actual anal sex with something that is not a saw, sexualizing a pedophilia and grooming victim, excessive handling of fecal matter, sexual assault, decapitation, a drive-by shooting, excessive vomit, an attempted abortion, intense violence, spousal abuse, consumption of bodily waste, and a live on-screen birth. All of these and more can be found in the other 5 non-Ren Seeks Help episodes of Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon. To be honest, I think a lot of people that really harp on Ren Seeks Help haven't seen the other episodes, because if they did, I'm sure they would have commented on them as well. I'm not blaming anybody for that. I wouldn't want to watch the other episodes either. And that's probably what fueled the hype for the episode overall. A lot of people might have seen their favorite reviewer cover the episode, and only that episode, and then they decided to take it to heart and call it the worst thing to ever happen to animation. But it seems like the reputation is starting to change. I've gotten a lot of comments on the community post we posted a little bit ago, asking for people's thoughts. People really are changing their minds. To be honest, I was going to feature some of the very few comments that we did get saying that Ren Seeks Help was the worst episode and probably one of the worst cartoons out there, but they all fell under the previous points. Most specifically about the second point where somehow it does things worse than the others. No disrespect to any people out there, and I'm sorry we're not going to be featuring any of those, and hey, if that's your opinion still, okay, that's totally fine. I'm just hoping that you hear me and the others out on this, okay? But here's what some of the fans had to say. MPAC says, a lot of animation reviewers call it the worst thing ever, like the tubers mentioned by you. It's not bad like Where the Dead Go to Die, but it does have its problems. It's an alright episode in my opinion. CJP Studios says, after watching your review on Adult Party Cartoon, I decided to check out a few bits of that episode myself. Honestly, I'm a little mixed about it from what I've seen. On one hand, it sort of has the same charm as the original show, even though I never grew up with it. But on the other hand, it almost feels like a fanfiction story and or creepypasta that John K. saw and was like, hey, this is a great idea for a Ren and Stimpy episode, let's do it! Jokes aside, I don't really know what to think of it. Someone with the username that I'm pretty sure is supposed to be pronounced I'm Awkward had this to say. Having watched Stimpy's Pregnant and Onward and Upward, along with having grown up seeing much worse things, I can tell you now that it's not the abomination that people think it is. It's a meh episode of a really bad show, and that's kinda where my views end on it. Tune for Thought says, I lean about the same as you did in your original video. That being that while it's still really flawed, it's the only story with legit substance and some level of investment. And finally, Silent Jack says, as someone who certainly finds it hard to stomach very shocking and grotesque images, that is, of course, if it's disturbing and real enough to be hard to watch, I really never understood why that episode is regarded as the worst thing in cartoon history. Like, yeah, of course it's definitely not good, and certainly a real drag to watch, but there is certainly worse media out there that is more disturbing or just plain shocking, and the gross out is just numb to me there. It's more just dull and tiresome with how hard it tries to be shocking. Instead of focusing on what Ren and Stimpy was truly about, which was being funny, especially since the other APC episodes I believe are even worse with how they drag and the material they present. So yeah, definitely not good, but I would definitely not say it's the worst thing ever made. More of just bland, boring, and repetitive. Which, then again, saying it out loud really describes the show as a whole. I couldn't agree more with all these takes, and so many people had so many good ones, and no disrespect to the people that disagree. If you really find this episode uncomfortable, I totally get it. I totally understand if you would never want to see this thing again, or prefer if this was never made at all. To be honest, even though I only find about 5% of this episode to be disturbing, and even then not really that disturbing, I really wish this wasn't made either. It's a waste of time, a waste of talent, and really if it stopped existing, would the world be any different? So I want to clarify that the point of this video is not to chastise people that think that this thing is disturbing. I totally get it. However, I wanted to give this episode a fair shake and a chance to get the reputation that it used to have. Even if it stinks, Ren Seeks Help is definitely not the worst episode of Ren and Stimpy Adult Party Cartoon, bar none. Well folks, thanks for watching the video. What'd you guys think? What did you think of Ren Seeks Help? Do you agree with us, or do you agree with all the other internet critics saying that it's the worst thing ever? Whatever you believe is totally fine. If you don't agree with us, hey, more power to you. Believe whatever you want to believe, and hey, who knows? Maybe you have some kind of middle opinion in this whole thing. I don't know. Comment below and let us know, because we're always excited to hear what you guys have to say. And now, friends, it's time for the comment of the day. Today's comment of the day goes to Just Another Poppet, and it's a pretty long one, but in short, they talk about their experience with the more dramatic episodes of Jimmy Neutron and talking about the dramatic turn that Planet Sheen was supposed to take, because yes, that wasn't supposed to be a comedy, that was supposed to be serious. And wow, what a wild ride that would have been. I actually think I would have preferred that over the actual Planet Sheen that we got, but hey, Nickelodeon doesn't know what they're doing, so I guess we have to get what we get and not throw a fit. Unless you're an online content creator, then I guess it's totally fine. And now it's time to thank our Patreon executive producers, Lee Fraser, Valkaria, Whoop-Doo, MD the Dude, Blackjack, Nightingale Wednesday Nightmare, Unkale, Manny Paredes, H.R. Hoffman, and Edward Haas. If you too would like your name read at the end of every Media Mementos video, then consider donating to our Patreon, which has a link in the description below. Thank you all for watching, folks. We love you very much, and we'll see you guys next time.